everyone, and welcome to SPED Homeschool Conversations. We're so glad that you're with us this evening. It isn't a night like normal, but we're excited to be wrapping up the end of 2020, which I'm sure most of you are. But we're focusing this month, we've only got two shows this month, and we're focusing on family relationships because we really feel like our family relationships have been stressed a lot this year, and we just really want to encourage you. There is hope in connecting with your family, building tighter relationships, and celebrating a Christmas that can build your family up. And so today my guest is Aby Rinella. Welcome, Aby. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And our topic is growing family relationships through shared adventures. And Abby's going to share a lot with us about how her family is very adventurous and just give us some encouragement for kind of stepping out of the box of what we would normally do to help build those relationship bonds with our families. And I also want to thank Right Start Math for sponsoring this episode of SPED Homeschool Conversations. They are one of our partners, and I'll introduce you a little bit more to them about halfway through the show, but we just want to thank them for sponsoring this episode. And So yeah, we just welcome you if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube or on Periscope. Just feel free to join in the conversation and let us know you're there and put in some comments and questions in the feed, and we'd love to incorporate that into our discussion. And if you're watching afterwards or listening on the podcast, just know that you can always join us usually on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Central. So anyways, as we kick this off, Aby, I just want our families to get to know you a little bit better and your family, maybe a little bit about your homeschooling story, and also how are you involved in other areas in the homeschooling world?
Okay, so like you said, I'm Aby Rinella, and I am the mom of 3 kids. And I do this crazy parent thing with my amazing husband named Jesse. And I was actually a public school teacher before we had kids. And the day that I had our first child, my husband looked at me and said, God gave her to us to raise and not for anybody else to raise. So I came home from the public schools. I decided the greatest gift was raising our own children rather than everybody else's. And I never turned back.
Awesome.
So I dove full into the homeschool world. I absolutely love it. I feel like it's God's calling on our life and on parents' lives. And it's also just a passion of mine. I started a local co-op in the town that I live, or it's more of a support group. I'm on the board of my state organization, Homeschool Idaho. So my husband and I serve on that board. And I am the co-host of the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast and just a writer and a speaker in the homeschool community.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So very involved. So you started your homeschool journey with the first one being born, and you haven't stopped since.
Exactly. We have not experienced the taking a child out of public school and into homeschool. We've been very blessed that this is how we've always done it. And that's awesome. It's just been a huge blessing for us in that. Yeah.
We've done the same thing. And my kids, that's just what school is. That's the way life is. And,
exactly.
I think this should be an encouragement for some families that are just getting started, that it can become, this is the way of life in our home. It isn't just like this new thing that's going to always be new.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, that's just awesome.
Yeah.
So, but your interests go beyond homeschooling, don't they?
They do.
And so can you share with our audience about the nonprofit you and your husband founded, and really what spurred that ministry?
Yeah. So my husband and I are very active outdoors men and women. We're hunters. We fish. We do a lot in the outdoors. And God just opened doors for us in the last many years where we were writing and speaking in the outdoor industry for different hunting organizations, fishing, anything outdoors. And as we were just getting more and more involved in that industry, we just knew that the Lord opened those doors for more than just our own personal gain. And we really prayed through it. We couldn't figure out why God was opening all of these doors. And then he really just put on our heart to start this nonprofit where we take children with disabilities, well, actually families, entire families that are impacted by disability or illness or just other challenges. And we take them on outdoor adventures. And so just people that might need extra help doing what we do or the like. We like to come alongside them, pair them with organizations, and that's what we do. And it's exciting. So cool. It's brand new. We're just getting our, we're just launching. We're just getting started on this, but we're so excited to see where the Lord takes it.
That's very cool. And so you have a lot of experience to speak to our community specifically, because I think we put up boundaries and say, well, that's not for me. Right. And it does take a little bit of a mind shift, I guess.
Yes, it certainly does. And you said earlier, we're trying to think outside the box. And I feel like lately we've kind of all been pushed outside the box. We've all been shoved outside the box. So it doesn't feel as hard anymore to think outside the box, because we really, that's kind of where we've been pushed into. So it's a great time. Yeah, it's a great time to start thinking outside the box. And so basically the focus on our ministry, which is really exciting, is it's really not about us or even necessarily the individual, but it's really about showing our Creator through his creation. It's about just showing the blessing of family in general and really the value of life, all life. So those are our primary three focuses with Called Beyond.
Because when you get outside, it's just there's something about putting yourself into the natural element versus with all the man-made stuff that we're normally surrounded
Absolutely.
with.
And the Bible speaks of it so often that all of creation speaks his name. And so when you're surrounded by it, it's incredible.
I know. My husband usually chooses those camping spots where I can get no Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And so,
Smart
so
man.
I am forced to be in nature, and it is so good for me. I've got my hammock, and I set it up, and I'm good.
That's so great. That's awesome.
Yeah. But, so before we start talking about adventures, let's talk a little bit about what holds us back from being adventurous. Just as a typical person, not even with a disability, but then if we have a member in our family that does have a disability, what's compounded that often will stand in the way of us being adventurous?
Right. I would say there's many things that go into that. One is fear. I mean, honestly, fear of the unknown. I mean, anything that is out of our comfort zone. We all kind of get into a groove of what's comfortable, what we know, kind of control of what's going on around us. And to think about getting outside of that can cause some anxiety and some fear. I also think that doubt often creeps in, like, can I do this? What could possibly go wrong? Which the list is miles long. We have always, like, when our first child was 3 months old, we threw her on our back and went bear hunting. And I'm sitting there thinking, the list of things that could go wrong is immense. Like, my home feels so safe right now. So just that doubt and that fear. And then I often think sometimes just going it alone can be intimidating. And that's really where our heart is with Called Beyond, is to come alongside people and encourage and do it together so that people don't feel completely vulnerable to do it alone. So there's a lot of things that hold us back. And in fact, it feels safer to not adventure, to be honest. But the blessings that come from it, and we'll get into that, it's incredible.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've got 10 adopted siblings, all with special needs, and my parents eventually, my dad has been an outdoorsman all of his life, and we grew up camping in tents. I don't do that. We don't but he ended up buying a big camper because that's the only way my siblings could travel. Right. And just, adapted that environment so that it would be usable, yet he could still enjoy that same adventure. And, just accepting those differences too, that it may not be exactly like it used to be. Exactly. But we're still going to be getting out and pushing everybody to the edge of what they've done before.
Right. Absolutely. That's exactly what it's all about, is we all have to adjust our expectations. I think that's a really big one, is, when we expect it to be a certain way, most likely we're going to fail in that expectation, but we adjust and we adapt. And, my life looks very different when I had a 3-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old out in the backcountry than it does now, than it did before, when it was just myself. But we have to adjust expectations, and we have to understand that doing these things, it's more about the journey and the process than it is about the ultimate outcome. You know, we have to redefine what success even looks like. You know, it might not look like roughing it in a tent in the backcountry. It might simply be, you know, spending an evening under the stars in your backyard. So just being able to redefine what success is. And at the end of the day, we always say, did we learn from this and did we grow together? And if those two things were done, then that's success. So
yeah, adventure, we can label it very differently.
Yeah, for sure.
So true.
Yeah.
And yet it's all adventurous.
It all is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, love that. So, you know, what are some suggestions you may have for families who would like to be more adventurous, but maybe have never even thought about this?
Right.
Let alone, you know, had it in the back of their minds as, oh, you know, this is kind of on my bucket list, or I'd like to take my kids this before they graduate. You know, I hear those things. You know, a lot of parents say this, you know, I really wanted, but how do I even go about starting, you know, this process, and where do we go from there?
Well, I would say the first thing we just talked about is adjust your expectations. Honestly, just say, you know, what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to do something outside the box, to do something where we're all kind of put in a different situation where we have to depend on things outside of what we normally do. And then I would say start small. Don't say we're going to all go do, you know, we're all going to climb the highest peak in our state next week, you know. Start small and tangible, and then just do it and know that it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And I think that we have to say it's okay that it's not easy. And I've had so many experiences where I'm in the middle of something. And again, some of our stories, what we do is we do a lot of backcountry with our kids, which means, you know, there's no running water, there's no beds. The food is what you pack on your back, and you're tired, and I think it's okay to say this is hard, and it's okay to, and I think for kids that have, disabilities or kids that struggle in any way, even an illness, it's kind of good for them to see that, hey, other people have hardships too. Like, this isn't easy for them either, you know, like it's not like everything's easy for everyone but me. So that's a huge blessing. So know it's going to be hard, but know it's going to be worth it. It's definitely going to be worth it. And then I would say team up with other people. You know, don't team up with other people, find other families that say, we want to be adventurous, but we don't know where to start, you know, and then ask for help, ask around. There are so many things out there anymore where there is help. There are, you know, there's a lot of adaptive sports. There's a lot of like what we do where we can get you into the field, where otherwise maybe you couldn't. So be willing to ask for help and just go for it. You know, what's the worst that could happen? Just kidding.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, it's like, you know, my family goes up to the Boundary Waters, which is like in northern Minnesota, and we pack in for a week, and my dad has all the equipment. And so, but my sister was very wise when we took the three cousins that were all 13 that year, that we were only going to go in 2 lakes in, and we were going to stay in one spot. We weren't going to take, you know, the full round trip adventure. And they loved it. And so my daughter is now asking to go back and do something more, where I think if we would have pushed it to the point where this is what we did, this is, you know, how we did it before, that wouldn't have been the outcome. She would have said, I am not doing that again.
Absolutely. That's such good advice. You know, that start small, make it doable so that when it's finished, they have a sense of completion. Yeah. That's such good advice.
Right. Yeah. And you want the outcome to be good. And you can't control the weather, you know, you can't control a whole lot of other things, but there are some things that you can control. And so just take it for what it is. And, and we did end up leaving a day early still because the rain was coming in and we saw it coming and just said, nope, we're going to endure this.
Totally. Leave while it's good, right? So that they want more, right? And I think as parents sometimes, I think in anything, in homeschooling, in just in life, we keep hitting this over and over, but adjusting our expectations. When as a parent, when it's like, we're going to hit all 5 lakes, and I don't care how many blisters everybody has, or, you know, we're going to, what we have to do is remember, what is the goal? The goal is to bond as a family, to encourage our kids out there to have an incredible time, and ultimately to point to our Creator through His creation. And when we push it, we need to adjust our expectations and remember that we are coming as a whole family to do this together. So that's going to make for a success every time.
Mm-hmm. But then there's the flip, too, of when you know they can do something and they aren't going to do it.
Right,
totally. You really have to push them towards it.
You have to push.
Because we went out to the Smoky Mountains this year and did some camping, and we didn't tell my daughter how long the hike was. We just said, we're going on a hike. It was 8 miles. And she's like, the first 2 miles were completely straight uphill, and she's like, are we done yet?
Oh, my goodness, that's a riot. It's just around the corner. It's just around the corner, right? We do that one a lot. And you know what we notice with kids is they'll be like tanking and I can't take another step. And then you blink and they're running up ahead of you, you know? Exactly. And so we have to just persevere.
Snack.
Yeah. So that's so funny. So it is that balance. And we see that in every area. We see that in school, when to push our kids, when to, let them take a break. And it's being in tune to our children in every area of life.
Yeah, and even in tune to yourself. I mean, as we're going back to, helping ourselves be adventurous and going back to those questions, that you said, about fear and about doubt and about what, all these unknowns that we can run into. What am I doing to hold myself back? Or, even you talked about partnering with people. How can those people somehow come against, all these things that are holding me back and say, question you and really hold you accountable. Are you pushing yourself or are you holding yourself back? Right.
Oh, that's so good. That's so true. Yeah. The goal is to overcome all those things that hold us back. Right. And do it incrementally so that we don't get overwhelmed, but we are successful. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, I guess, we've talked about some big adventures, but, even if it's smaller things, just taking that first step and doing that and seeing where it takes you. And I think that's what leads up to, let's do something a little more adventurous next time.
Because you've seen that you can do it. You've seen how to overcome it. You've seen how to accomplish it. But again, start small. Like you said, push yourself, but start small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yes, so true. So what is it about adventure that just brings people together,
Or completely tears people apart. Just kidding. I have to say there's been many times on the side of the hill where 99% of the time it's bringing us together, and other times we're all just like, what are you doing?
Right, exactly.
There is so much about adventuring together that brings us together. And I'd say one of the main things is it gets us out of our comfort zone and it stretches us. We get out of the humdrum and the routine of our everyday life that seems to wear us down. And I kind of sometimes think of it's that seeing the forest beyond the trees when we're so ingrained in the laundry and the dishes and the homeschool and the reading and the emails and the everything day to day, it just feels tense sometimes. And when we can get out of that and we can get out of our comfort zone and we can see the big picture, it helps us see each other in a different light as well. Like I see things in my children that I don't necessarily see in the day in and the day out at home. I see how they help each other in a different way, or how they encourage each other, or, how one of them really is strong in ways that I never saw. So I think that's one of the huge ways that it brings us together. And then also when we face new things, it always brings us together because we depend on one another. I can't go it alone out there, and I can see that, my husband's gifts or my daughter's gifts often can make up for some of my weaknesses. And you're definitely a team, because when you're adventuring, if anybody steps out of it, whatever the adventure is, it's not always even safe. So, it brings people together that way. And then also, you have to carry one another's burdens. And I think that's how it brings a family together is, for example, when I'm looking at my children and one of them can carry more weight, and I see, as we're going up the hill, they'll carry a few things. They carry each other's burdens physically, but also just emotionally. When one is like, I can't do this, I can't, do one more thing. Then the encourager, steps in, that child who just has that natural bent towards encouragement, that gift. And it just brings you together as a family. And that is such an incredible, it's just incredible to watch how the dynamics change.
Right. Yeah. It takes us out of those artificial elements.
Yes.
That we find ourselves in and day out. And we have that routine. And, it goes even beyond, the physical stuff, but just how we interact with each other. I've seen,
totally,
even just how my kids pray around, the dinner table. It's like they say the same thing.
Right.
And it's like,
totally.
You got to throw things off balance.
So
just kind of say, this isn't, this perfect little reality we've created isn't how the world functions. It's not how God made this
exactly.
world.
No. And it's not meant to be rote. I think life can get so rote. We get up, we do the same thing, we say the same prayer, we, have the same math struggle, we have the same, and I know how my child is going to respond in every one of those situations. I know how they're going to respond when math gets hard. I know how they're going to respond when a sibling gets on their nerves, and it just becomes rote and it doesn't push us or stretch us. And sometimes it takes away our dependency on God because we already know the plan. We already know the routine, and so when we get into these, or like you said, outside of the artificial elements around us, we see each other differently and we see God in a different light, which is so important.
Right. Yeah. And we start to mask about how we deal with things because we become, as the child with the math problem, here's how I respond to it.
Right.
And so, but I don't think about being compassionate or kind. I think about doing the same thing I did before.
Exactly.
Because I just want to get beyond this because I'm so tired of it. And when those new things do come up, it requires you to respond in a different way, or at least seek different ways to respond.
Right,
and
exactly.
And the same for our family members too. And that's so good that.
Yeah. And I also think another reason that adventuring together, and again, when we talk about adventuring, it doesn't have to be these enormous things. It's basically anything outside of your box that feels adventurous. Sometimes for me, honestly, going to a mall in a city is incredibly adventurous because it's so outside of my element and it's downright terrifying to me. But just in anything that we adventure together as a family, it brings you together because you have a common goal. You have a common goal, and we are it kind of levels the playing field. When you're outside of your element, the playing field is kind of leveled, and we're only as strong as our weakest member. And so we really all have to come together to build up that child. So for us, it's the 5-year-old who can't pack as much as everybody else, or may not swim as well on a river trip, or those things. We are only as a family as strong as she is. And I always laugh because my husband and I will get really warm gear, or we'll get the kids warm gear, and we always say we're only as warm as our coldest family member, and so it really brings us together to be very aware of one another, to team up and build up, and at the end of the day, it produces selflessness because, we're thinking of others and we're realizing that we are one unit. So that helps. And at the end of the day, we have a sense of camaraderie and unity and accomplishment in whatever adventure. I mean, whatever adventure we did, when it's accomplished, we did it together. Nobody can boast in their own, So it's definitely a family builder.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that what you said about, being the weakest person is that common denominator.
Yes.
And that is so true that we often, when we're siloed and in an artificial environment, we can say, this is your issue, and then I can separate and I can make this my issue. But when we are dependent on one another, like you said, it does. It makes you all one.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that is how God made us to function as a body of Christ. And yet we can remove ourselves from that community.
Right,
say, I can
for
be
sure.
A community of one. And our society tells us that over and over again.
Exactly.
Yet these adventures, just getting out of our norm, will do that.
Exactly. And it really does come down to the scripture that says, love your brother, above yourself. Love one another above yourself. And And that's going to make you successful, because when you're on an adventure, if everybody is, climbing on their own or determined to have their own way, it could be dangerous, and it's going to destroy the entire thing. Mm-hmm. So, yep, I think that's probably the greatest thing that we've learned. And it's a learning process. Mm-hmm. Don't think that you're going to go on these adventures and be like, oh my goodness, we love each other so much and it's just so wonderful and it's so peaceful. That's not true either. This is a journey, and it's often through many shed tears and, arguing and, it's life, and we're all a bunch of sinners, seeking the common goal of being like Christ. So don't listen to this and go like, oh, all we need to do is go on an adventure and everybody's going to get along.
Exactly. No. And I think some of those most heated moments happen during those times, because you can't walk away. You
can't. When you are on the side of the hill, there is no room to storm, or in any situation that's not your comfort zone. Let's say that it's just at a park you don't normally go to. You can't just storm away and go to your corner. You have to work through it.
Exactly. So. and that forced working through it. It's like those rooms that you get locked in and you're trying to find the clues. And you're
that's very adventurous.
That is adventurous.
Yes.
So, but yeah, you have a one common goal, and that's what draws everybody together. And,
yes. What are those called? Those are called
escape rooms.
Escape rooms. And I would say that is a great example of adventure. It doesn't have to be for us, we really promote outdoor adventure, because we believe that there's something so healing about that, and we can see God in it. But any adventure, those escape rooms, it's all the same thing. You have to work as a team. You're only as strong as your weakest member. There is no escaping unless you all escape together, know. And so that's a very adventurous activity that will bring, bonding through struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And those bonds just continue to grow tighter and tighter the more experiences you have with one another. And that's so important that we do that, because like we were talking about before, when we don't do that, we can become so siloed, and our family members can just grow apart. And you unfortunately hear this from so many families whose kids have gone to public school. The parents haven't really raised their children. They've sent them off. They've barely spent enough time with them, and they're like, and then they leave for college thinking, who was this person in my home? Oh. And don't let those years slip by. Be intentional.
Absolutely.
This is something that you can grasp onto. So.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. That's so true. And I think it's a matter of, like you said, it's just spending time together without a screen in front of you, without everybody in their own corners, and I look around at society and I see families being torn apart by, screens and artificial life. And it's really not how we were designed. Kids were designed to have fresh air in their lungs and the vitamin D from the sun on their faces and, touching the ground and experiencing all of God's creation. And it will not return void, in that you will, it's good for our spirit. It's good for our physical body. It's good for our mental state, and it's good for our relationships. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so true. And, now that my kids are adults, those are the things they talk about with those adventures. When we lived on a farm in Minnesota, and, they would go out and climb in the haylofts, or shoot each other with pellet guns.
Right.
Those, but they don't talk about remember we watched a movie together? No.
Yeah. No.
And so you've got to build those memories, because that is what's going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Those are those bonding times that will continue to rebond your family over and over again too as they get older, and those are the memories that they have.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. That's so important. No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to talk about just adventures with COVID. And Christmas, and what do we do? And, how do we make that work in the environment and the days that we're living? So I'm going to give Aby a break for just a second, and we're going to hear from our sponsor, Right Start Math. So I just want to thank Right Start Math again for sponsoring this episode of SPED Homeschool Conversations. And I'm just going to read you a little bit about who they are and and what they're about. So Right Start Math helps children understand, apply, and enjoy mathematics using games to learn concepts, strategies, and to practice math facts. This is a unique program which uses visualization of quantities and de-emphasizes counting, provides strategies, visual pictures, for learning the facts. Place value is introduced early to solidify a child's understanding, and primary tool that they use to teach math is an AL abacus, a specifically designed two-sided abacus that's kinesthetic and visual. They also ask, do your children like to play games? Because they have a lot of those too. Over 300 card games that children will love. They want to help your child achieve success by getting rid of the frustration and tears while having fun doing math. And so definitely check out their website, rightstartmath.com, to find out more about their curriculum and see if it might be a good fit for your homeschool and your child. So I'm going to bring Aby back, and we are going to continue talking about family adventures and just tightening relationships in your family through adventure. And we talked a lot about things in the last half an hour about just how we can have some roadblocks and we need to move beyond what's comfortable for us to get into those places. A lot of times there's some people are just born to be adventurous and can move past those much easier than others. And but Aby, you also talked about coming alongside people and maybe finding somebody who's a little more adventurous than you are, who you can do that with.
Right.
That'll push you in and not, take it at your pace too.
Right.
So yeah, but as we're talking about this during the holiday season, and during a very unique holiday season that none of us have ever experienced. I know I have family in Minnesota that are in complete lockdown right now, and other northern states are too. So how do we be adventurous during this time? And if you are in our community, you're watching, you have some ideas, definitely share them with us. Or if you have a question, this is what's going on here. How do we even start, this process of getting out and doing something with our family that is a little out of the box?
Right. Well, but most of your audience, I assume, are homeschool families. And so one thing that we have going for us is we're not really we're not adjusting as much as everybody else is with having kids home. And so for us, it's been really exciting because everything's canceled, right? And that's throwing a lot of people for a loop. But for those of us who aren't adjusting to having our kids home with us, it's really actually opened up a lot of freedom for us, right? We're not learning how do we do this homeschool thing? What does this look like? We already have that kind of figured out. Well, nobody has it figured out, but we're further along the journey. Right. We're continuing to learn. But it has, I think, to me, there's no greater time than right now to take a hold of the opportunity of being adventurous, because all of the Christmas things that we're probably used to doing that fill our December, most of those have been canceled. And so there's a lot of free time right now. And what better time to say, let's try something new. Let's do something different. Usually our calendars are so busy. We don't have time to go cut a tree. We just have to hurry up and grab one on the way home from the grocery store and put up. But, this year's a little bit different. We have a lot, our schedules are a little more cleared, and, there's a lot that we can do to be adventurous, and we just have to think outside the box, and we have to be willing to not be afraid. So one story is last year, my husband's 93-year-old grandmother was with us, and we ice fish a lot. So that's just something we do where we're from. And, she just was asking a lot of questions about it, and we thought, why couldn't we take her? She isn't walking well. And we thought, let's get creative. That's another thing that getting adventurous as a family does. We're like, let's get creative. It breeds all sorts of creativity. And my son, who was 9 at the time, and my husband thought, how can we get great grandma, who's 93, on to the middle of a lake and keep her warm? And they came up with the coolest way of putting her in a sled on a chair and strapping it on and taking her out there. And it was just being willing to say, we have this time, we have the drive with the idea, let's figure out how to do it. And you know what? one thing that we had to get out of. I'm like, no, not grandma. Something could happen, or she doesn't want to, or I don't want to put this on her. And when we did it, she was so thrilled. She was so happy to actually experience it with us. And I think families that have a child who we think would hold us back from these adventures, maybe they're wheelchair bound, maybe, maybe they have some sensory disorders that we thought there's no way that they could, we have to be willing to say, let's give it a try, because it could just open up their world, and it could bring such joy and such pleasure. And you know what? Worst case scenario, they hate it and we never do it again, right? Yes. But we gave it a go, right? The worst that could happen is they don't like it. So during this Christmas season with COVID and the cancel, I'd say if you live in a place to go get a tree, go pick out a tree, even if it's just from a tree farm. So fun. And again, you're going to have to work through refining one another out there when you pick out a tree. It will bring you
with ones that have like whole sides missing, and everybody's going, who didn't see that?
This? I know. It's true, but when you look at that tree, you have the memory from the adventure that came with it. Or, it doesn't, like we keep saying, it doesn't have to be big. It could simply be, let's get up early, really early. There's nobody can't get up early, and let's watch the sunrise together. Whether we have to drive somewhere to see it or we can see it in our front yard, that alone could be an adventure. And it could push a lot of your family members beyond what they're comfortable. There are going to be family members who don't want to get up early. But when you're all watching the sun come up, I promise you, it's incredible, because you're seeing God in and how he orchestrated everything to work. Or maybe it's staying up late and going on a full moon walk, going on a walk in the full moon and listening to the sounds or the silence. And, bonus points if you do it on a frozen lake. Or just simply fishing. I mean, there's got to be somewhere near everyone that maybe it's just even if it's a stocked fishing pond, it's something new. So I would just say take the time, and rather than be discouraged this holiday season with your normal being canceled, think of it as an incredible opportunity to try something new as a family. And you win some and you lose some, but keep going and try new things.
That's great advice. I love those ideas. Yes, the fresh Christmas trees will always give you an adventure.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever done it without.
Never, ever. There will be tears. I don't think we've ever done it without tears somewhere. But that is what bonds you. That's what makes it stronger. It's closeness through those trials. Yeah, so
definitely. And I love the grandma and the ice fishing. Because my parents have a lot of kids at home still. I had to get my mom out of the house, and my mom never spent time with my kids because they had adopted kids, and so my mom really didn't know my daughter very well, and so I made plans with my dad to kidnap my mother for 3 days, and so sometimes think outside of what arrangements need to be made for another person in order for that person to go somewhere. So my daughter and I took her to New York City for 3 days. We went and saw a Broadway show, and we pushed my mom around in a wheelchair. She can't walk, but that allowed her to have that adventure, for her to get to know my daughter, and that's a precious memory that we all share.
And the love that spoke to your mom, to say we were willing to take New York at a slower pace, or to do the harder thing of the pushing you, and it speaks love, and isn't that what it's about? The greatest commandment: love God and love others. And what greater way can we love others by sacrificing our own ease to allow someone else to do something they may not be able to normally do without our help.
Right. Yeah. And it does require, when you bring people out into just the outdoors or into different places who do have disabilities, there are going to be some things that just you can't do. That's just the reality of it. Yeah. But what you can do, I think we when we start thinking that process, we start thinking about can't. But then, I see family pictures that, my parents have taken of my adopted siblings all around the campfire in their wheelchairs with their s'more, roasting marshmallows. And, those are the things they can do.
Yes.
Maybe, we can't go on a hike.
Right.
Unless there's a paved path.
Right.
But there's so many other things that we can do.
Absolutely.
Even if it's a hike on the road at the campground. Because
Absolutely.
a lot of those campgrounds are really nice, and you get a good hike by just being on the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. I think that's the best shift of thinking is not what we can't do, but what can we do? And again, like going back to what you said with this COVID Christmas, stop focusing on all the things we can't do and think about what can we do,
Yeah.
So it's exciting. It's exciting.
It is. I think, as I was hearing you talk, we have to build some new family traditions this year.
Yes.
And that can be adventurous.
Very.
Because we're so stuck in, but we've done this every year, and we've done this every year, or this is what our family has always done.
Right.
And, okay, so if we have to change it up, what's it going to look like? Is it really going to ruin that tradition, or can we replace it with something else?
Yeah.
That may end up being a better tradition that we may never go back to that other one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It kind of strips away, like we were talking about before, the things that we do just because we do them. And it really gets us back down to the, why are we doing these things? And can we do it differently and still have that same value, Right.
Yes.
So we might not get to go, do the tree lighting where everybody's there, but really it's about being together. So is there a way we can do that? It's good. It's good for our kids. It's good for us. It's good for everybody to step outside the box. And like we said before, we've been shoved outside the box. And so it's the best time to get adventurous. So, and I'd love to hear from your listeners at some point, other ways that they're, getting adventurous and ideas, because we do need to share that with each other, because sometimes people are like, I have no idea. Right. But when we share stories, we're like, we could do that. We could totally do that,
Yeah. And our goal at SPED Homeschool, I don't know if you've heard about this, but we're going to be launching family camps as soon as all the COVID restrictions fall. And so that parents can have assigned buddies for their kids. Yes. And they can actually go to a camp and go canoeing and go swimming and motorboarding, boating, and all of those things that maybe they wouldn't have access to.
Right.
And so that's always been something big on my heart. So
I love that idea.
The state organization in Minnesota already said we're on board. We're going to make this happen. So it's going to be similar to what the Johnny and Friends camps are like. We've actually had some people that worked at those camps that are going to be replicating a lot of our processes for that.
That is so exciting. And that's what's needed. And that's what we do with Called Beyond is, we're able to do these things, and God has given us the ability to do, a certain amount of things that we want to come alongside other people and take them beyond what they're able to do as we do it together, and that is so exciting. And just to give kids adventures that's awesome. I'm excited about that, Peggy.
Yeah, I'm very excited. But, going back to what you were talking about before is that, we're reevaluating everything this year. Mm-hmm. And reevaluating isn't such a bad thing.
No.
Because we tend to just kind of slide through life.
Yep.
And God asks us to reevaluate every day.
Yes.
Sit with me, learn from me, and yet we get too busy to do that. And so to embrace that reevaluation and say, where can these adventures that maybe I wouldn't have done fit into that. Right.
And I would say too, on kind of a side note, if you're looking at things to do that are adventurous, I think one of the number one things that our family has seen the fruit of is when we do what we do, which isn't going to look like what other people do, but we leave devices behind. And for us, it's mandatory because there is no cell service or internet anywhere near where we go. But I cannot tell you how when you are all hands on deck because you're doing something new and everybody's focused and you're not distracted and you're really focusing on one another, that alone will build relationships. So as you do these new things, you can't juggle something new and your devices. So it kind of forces you to focus on what you're doing, to be in the moment, and to be really with who you're with. And so just make sure that you protect that and that you really are in the moment of whatever it is that you're doing and you're with who you are with in that moment.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think we tend to forget that those devices are even on us.
I know.
Checking them because it's just become like just the
It is.
it's an attachment.
It is.
And
it
you
is.
just really have to get over that and
Yes.
and set it down. And sometimes I forget where I put my phone because I'm so used to just leaving it. And I have people saying, "Why didn't you answer my text?" And I'm thinking, I don't live on my phone.
Right.
So
Yep. You live in the moment that you're in, and it's fruitful to do that. And so, again, anything adventurous, it kind of forces you to do that, because you're figuring things out. So that's good.
Yeah, it's so important I'm reading a book called Here and Now, and it's this woman's journey about her daughter having cancer and just what God taught her about having to put down devices and what really mattered in the moment and what we can really live without.
Right.
And it was a good reminder. I was diagnosed with cancer in April, and so this year has been a year.
Wow. Oh my
and,
goodness.
Just what is important. And, so, we're talking about adventure, but, you really need to look at what are we doing in the day in and day out that's really going to matter. And it's been a very refining process for our family this year with that.
Wow. I cannot imagine. But again, it readjusts your priorities. It readjusts, like you said, what matters. And
Exactly.
I think that's good. I think everything being stripped from us lately, as hard as it is, as much as we don't like it, God tells us that there will be good that is meant, that will come. And so that has been good. We're seeing people being more adventurous. I've never seen so many people so adventurous lately because we're having to get creative, So, and we're investing in our families and we're back home together. So, it's not all bad.
Yeah, no, it really is. And God only gives good gifts. That's what one of my pastor's wives remind me. And she just said, you just remember, this is a good gift.
Right.
And because God doesn't give bad gifts. So,
right.
And that's, I guess, a good reminder for parents too. And if you have a disability or if you have a medical issue or anything that you're struggling with, or you just didn't want to homeschool this year, God sees this as a good gift, and can you receive it as that?
Right.
And
that's so good. He doesn't make mistakes, right?
No. Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. So as we're wrapping up, I would love for you to be able to tell our families how they can find you with Called Beyond, as well as Schoolhouse Rocked. And I've got both of those websites. So
great.
I'll let you figure out which one you want to talk about first.
Yeah. Okay. So Schoolhouse Rocked is an awesome ministry that just encourages and equips and comes alongside homeschool families. It kind of started and is a documentary, an amazing documentary about homeschooling but it's become so much more. It's a full-blown ministry. There's a podcast, which I co-host with my dear friend, Yvette Hampton. And so it's a great encouragement. So you can go to schoolhouserock.com and find everything that you ever needed there regarding homeschooling. They'll point you to state organizations. They'll point you to every kind of encouragement. It's just a great hub for all things homeschool. So, and then so you can find me over there. And then Called Beyond is the nonprofit organization that my husband and I have started to help take, again, families, entire families. That's really our focus. Is we don't just take the child, we take the whole family, because we really believe in the blessing of family, and that when we do things together, it's just greater. So we take families that have been impacted by any disability or illness, or just other things that might hinder them from getting outdoors and doing outdoor adventures. And we team up with organizations in the field and guides and outfitters and to help families get out and adventure together. And you can find us over at, it's actually the callbeyond.org. And that's Called Beyond, where you can donate to the ministry and help get families out and adventure, or you can apply for an adventure and just get to know a little bit about what we do there.
That's so cool. Yes. And I just have to encourage you, if you've never, even thought that you would do an outdoor adventure, or you've never camped in your life, it really is good for you.
Yes.
Even though I camp normally in a trailer, I do get in a tent every once in a while.
The trailers, they will spoil you.
I know. We have a 1970 refurbished Airstream. And my husband actually grew up in it, and we had it redone. And so
that's an adventure, refurbishing that, right?
Well, we didn't do. We paid somebody.
Nice.
So
smart lady.
Yes, exactly. I think that would have been way too much of an adventure for us. We remodeled the homes together, and that was enough.
That was enough. Oh, that's so fun.
But yeah, so
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yes, we love Schoolhouse Rocked. I've been connected with Yvette since they started, and so that's
we love them. They're awesome, and we're all serving the kingdom together, and it's such a blessing and a privilege to see God interweave, all of us who are serving Him. And you can also find me over at Facebook. You can just look up Aby Rinella, and I'd love to connect with any of your listeners. And even if they have questions like, how do we do this? Or what does this look like? I get at least one call a week, like, how do you take small children out, or what's the key? How do you, and so we would love to connect with you over there. And again, on Instagram at Aby Rinella. So, so fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you just for sharing, for all the wisdom that you have, and just the encouragement. I think that's, is this overwhelming sense of just encouraging, just take this next step, do something different. It really is going to be okay, even if you're taking a 90-some-year-old grandmother on the ice.
It's going to be okay. And
it's going to be okay.
It is. So, well, thank you, Peggy. It has been such a joy, and I am so grateful to have done this with you, and you're doing amazing things. Thank you for answering the call that the Lord has put on your life.
Oh, it's a passion, definitely.
That's exciting.
Well, and thank you all of you for joining us. Thank you, Right Start Math, for sponsoring this episode of SPED Homeschool Conversations. We appreciate that and your continued support. And also, we are a nonprofit, so just for viewers like you who support our ministry on an ongoing basis. So next week will be the last broadcast for this year, and I'm going to be interviewing Connie Abers. She's a podcaster, an author, and she just has a heart for families. And so we're going to talk about a family-focused Christmas and just what does that mean. And she has some great ideas on just how to pull your family together and to focus on the Christmas season and maybe some new and different ways, or some more meaningful ways. And so we're going to focus on that next week. But yeah, so thank you, Aby, and for kicking off this month with us with relationships and adventures. And I just hope that it gave some people some encouragement to accept that box.
Yes.
that they are out of already.
Exactly.
Or just move beyond something they were trying to crawl back into, which I know, I talk to a lot of people, and that it's very tempting to say, I just want to go back.
Yes.
But let's just move forward.
Absolutely. So get out there, get adventurous, have some fun.
Yeah, that's so true. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again next week right here on SPED Homeschool Conversations. Bye, everybody.
Jesus wants our fears to launch us toward faith. Then he grins and says, "Do you trust me? Because together we can do this." With Mornings with Jesus, you can start your day in a positive way. Find hope through inspirational stories and scripture. Go to lifeaudio.com or search your favorite podcast app for Mornings with Jesus. You can also download the Abide app for biblical meditations at abide.com.